Dear students, I am Shivakumar Yasaladde, Department of Pharmacology, Shulingeshwar College of Pharmacy, Almala. Today we learn regarding the regulation of gastric secretion. Learning outcomes. Upon completion of this video, students should able to describe the regulation or phases of gastric secretion. The phases of regulation of gastric secretions is mainly divided into three phases. Cephalic phase, that is regulated by vagus nerve. Gastric phase, regulated by vagus nerve, local hormone, and as well as the gastrin. Then intestinal phase, that it can regulated by the nerves as well as gastrin, cholecystokinin, somatostatins, gastric inhibitory peptide, vasoactive intestinal peptide. It means the gastric secretions can regulated by both nerves as well as the hormone. So now we learn one by one phases regarding the regulation of gastric secretion. First phase, cephalic phase. The cephalic phase is mainly regulated by cerebrum. Cerebrum is the main part of the brain. So when you are thinking regarding the food, or we can see the food or smell the food or hearing about the food, so certain receptors was stimulated, so those stimuli can reaches to the cerebrum or cerebral cortex, and the cerebral cortex it can stimulate the hypothalamus and medulla oblongata. Then hypothalamus medulla oblongata, so they activate the cholinergic nervous system through ANS or parasympathomymatic nervous system, and parasympathomymatic nervous system stimulate the stomach through a vagus nerve or release of the acetylcholine. So due to that, from the stomach the secretion was increases, and due to increase the secretion, whatever the stretch receptors, so those are present in the stomach, so those also activated, and these receptor they send information to the cerebrum, and further the cycle was continuously. The stomach can involved in the secretions of the gastric juice. So this phase is known as the cephalic phase, dear students. So this phase is activated only when just you are thinking about the food, you are not really we can take the food or intake the food, only you can imagine. So something is food is made in home or some getting the smell, so that where we cannot take the food, but just thinking of the regarding the food we can feeling the hungry, so that is due to activations of the cephalic phase. Then second phase regarding the gastric phase. Dear students, the gastric phase is activated when the chyme or digested food came from oral cavity into the stomach. So due to entry of the chyme in the stomach, it can activate the stretch receptors, and due to activations of stretch receptors, some stimulatory information was generated, and these informations carried by the sensory neurons or sensory nerve. Example is a vagus nerve is the sensory as well as the motor nerve. So this vagus nerve, that is the 10th canal nerve, carries the message or stimuli that can created by stress receptors towards the cerebral cortex. Then the cerebral cortex regarding motor part of the cerebral cortex, so they integrate the message, and integrated they can develop the new message, so or stimuli, so that stimuli reaches to the hypothalamus. Then hypothalamus activate the autonomic nervous system, and autonomic nervous system is mainly consist of the two system, that is sympathomimetic nervous system and parasympathomymatic nervous system. And here the autonomic nervous system it can activate the parasympathetic nervous system, and the parasympathetic nervous system stimulate the vagus nerve, or it can releases the acetylcholine. So this released acetylcholine are stimulated vagus nerve, so they are entered towards the stomach, and where they can stimulate the G cells, that is the gastric cells, and ECL cells, that is enterochromaffin like cells. Then due to stimulations of G cells, ECL cells, the secretion of gastrin and histamine is increases, and the gastrin and histamine, so these are enhanced parietal cells or many other gastric gland, then hydrochloric acid or intrinsic factor or even the gastric secretion is increased. So like that, the entry of the chyme in stomach, the gastric secretion can be secreted. So this phase is known as the gastric phase. So now we learn regarding the intestinal phase. So this phase was activated or involved in the regulations of the gastric secretion. So when the food is or chyme or enter in the duodenum, and duodenum is the first part of the small intestines. So when the food or chyme enter in duodenum, it can stimulate the stretch receptors, so those are present in the wall of the duodenum or mucosa, then from which they can causes the release of the gastrin from G cells. Then gastrin, it can stimulate the stomach, then enhance the gastric secretion initially only for shorter duration. So this phenomena from the duodenum is helpful for the gastric empty rapidly initially. Then later on, when the duodenum is containing the chyme, then it can stop the, so this phenomena. In other side, it can activate the or stimulate the enteroendocrine cells and causes the release of the secretin and cholecystokinin. So these secretin and cholecystokinin, they can inhibit the stomach activity by entering through the enterogastric reflexes. So like that, they can inhibit the further gastric empty. So this phenomena is helpful for the digestions of the food in the duodenum, because the duodenum or small intestine, it is the larger surface areas of where the digestion and absorption is taken place, and they require some time for the digestions. So due to that, it can inhibit the entry of the food from the stomach and allow the water, the chyme or food enter in the small intestine, so that can be completely digested and absorbed. So dear students, so other side, the secretin cholecystokinin, they can stimulate the gallbladders. So gallbladders involved in the secretions of bile, and pancreas. The pancreas involved in the secretions of the pancreatic juice. It can contain the rich of the bicarbonate and as well as the, that is pancreatic amylase. So in bicarbonate, it is helpful for, so chyme can convert into basic, because actually it is acidic in the stomach and immediately enter duodenum, it having high acidic in nature, but that can be neutralized, converted to basic by secretions of bicarbonate from the pancreas, and as well as the pancreatic amylase involved in the metabolism of the carbohydrates, and the bile from the gallbladder, it is involved in the or helpful for the digestions of the fat, and due to stimulations of gallbladder, pancreas, the bile secretion and pancreatic juice is increases. In other side, the stimulations of endocrine cells, so they can cause the release of the gastric inhibitory peptides. So this gastric inhibitory peptide, one side inhibit the gastric activity, in another side it can stimulate the release of the insulin, and insulin is helpful for the regulations of carbohydrates in our body or system. So like that, the intestinal phase, it is involved in the regulations of the gastric secretion. So like that, these three phase, cephalic phase, gastric phase and intestinal phase, so these are involved in the regulation of gastric secretions in our body. Thank you, dear students.